What's going on, students, athletes, student athletes, people of all kinds? It's your host Omari back with another episode of the Student Athlete Show. We got some new scenery around us. Just got back into Chicago from NASCAR Road America up in Wisconsin, and it's been a long day. But I'm actually here to give you guys a review and give some thoughts on last night's UFC 276 card. Had some technical difficulties, had to reshoot this video, so it's getting to you a little bit late, but I'm gonna give you my thoughts. I was really excited for this UFC card. Israel Adesanya was fighting Jared Cannonier for the main event. Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski on the co-main event. And then we had some other exciting guys on the card. We had Robbie Lawler, UFC no doubt Hall of Famer, coming out there. We also had Sean O'Malley, on the other end of the spectrum, a very talented and promising upcoming prospect. And we also had Sean Strickland fighting Alex Pereira in only his third UFC bout. So a lot of the fights I was really excited for on this card. And unfortunately, I do have to say that overall, it was a very disappointing card. At almost every turn, it wasn't living up to my expectations, but can't be too mad about it. UFC definitely has more hits than misses, but I'm going to go through fight by fight and let you guys know what I think. The main card started out with seasoned UFC veteran Pedro Munoz fighting Sean O'Malley. Munoz, before the fight, was ranked 9th in the bantamweight division, while Sean O'Malley was ranked 13th. And I do believe this is Sean O'Malley's first fight being ranked in the top 15 coming into the fight. And fighting a seasoned veteran like Pedro Munoz, on the broadcast, they said Pedro Munoz has the most appearances at bantamweight in UFC history. So a guy that's been in the ring a really long time. I was really excited to see what Sean O'Malley would get to do with a guy like that who's gone through a lot of adversity in the past. And the first round, I would say Sean O'Malley probably took it. Both of the guys were really in a feeling out process. And only 3 minutes into the second round, the fight got stopped and it was ruled a no contest. Pedro Munoz could not finish the fight due to a poke in the eye. And on first sight, it wasn't the most gruesome looking eye poke I've ever seen in UFC. You know, it happens pretty often. Guys extending their hands out just to kind of like find their distance to jam a finger in the eye. And on his instant reaction, Pedro Munoz looked like he was going to be able to handle it okay, but it ended up being a doctor's stoppage. And I actually got the notification today that Pedro Munoz did have a scratched cornea. So I'm glad that they stopped the fight, glad that they got him out of there before any more damage was done. But that was a really bad way to start the card. Moving on to the next fight, we had Robbie Lawler fighting Brian Barberena. Neither guy ranked. Like I said, Robbie Lawler is a no doubt UFC Hall of Famer and really just a legend of the last 15 years. Always a guy that's going out having those knockdown, drag him out fights. And unfortunately, I have to say this fight I was the least excited for because Robbie Lawler has fallen so far off the pedestal he used to stand on. Robbie Lawler is a guy that was UFC champ, defended his title a couple of times. Had some of the greatest fights that we've seen in UFC. Just a really overall exciting guy. But he's lost 6 of his last 8 fights, I do believe. Actually, last night might have made it 7 out of the last 8. He's just really a guy that doesn't seem like he has too much left in the tank as far as fighting in UFC goes. A guy that's taken as much damage as he has taken, not only in this little streak after his fall from grace, but even back when he was a championship fighter, Robbie Lawler was a guy that was going in there fearless and he was throwing hands with anybody. And he's definitely taken a lot of damage, man. But last night he actually came out looking pretty good, looking aggressive, but falls victim to a TKO at the end of the second round. And I'm wondering how much more Robbie Lawler we are going to see in the UFC. If he does retire, I think he's a guy that has a really great personality. He's always shown a lot of passion for the sport. And I do think he could find a lot of fulfillment and a lot of dollars in other places. So I'm interested in seeing what happens with Robbie Lawler, but, you know, I can't say I want to see him in the ring too much anymore. And I also don't want him to be one of those guys that just ends up going to a different company and, you know, fighting until he's 50. I'd rather see those guys stay safe. Next fight, we had Sean Strickland fighting Alex Pereira. And this was my first time catching Alex Pereira live. He is famously known for being the last man to knock out Israel Adesanya. And this actually happened back in professional kickboxing before Adesanya moved over to MMA. The guy looked good. First round TKO. Actually, no, that one was a solid KO. First round, only 2 minutes and 36 seconds into the fight. Really funny outcome for that fight because I didn't see it from my own eyes, but I heard Sean Strickland was talking crazy at the press conference. They say he was talking stuff to Alex, he was talking to Izzy, talking about how he was coming for the title next, and boy, did he get backtracked. It looks like Alex Pereira might be on the fast track right now to a UFC championship fight with Israel Adesanya. Adesanya called him out at the end of his own fight later into the night. And although Alex Pereira was unranked coming into this fight, he's looking like the next man in line, especially because Israel Adesanya has really cleaned out that division. You look at the top 5 in that division, and he's fought every last one of them, or somebody that he's beaten has beaten somebody else in those top ranks. So we might get that fight really soon. I'm really excited for it. I do think he could give Adesanya some problems because Adesanya is a guy that, as great as he is, I do have to say he's a little bit one-dimensional. He has been working on his ground skills a whole lot, but those are mostly defensive skills that he's been working on and acquiring. And he's a guy that's going to stand up as long as you stand up. And Alex Pereira, after last night, does not look like he's going to be afraid to stand up with anybody. Then we had the co-main event. We had Alexander Volkanovski fighting Max Holloway. A fight that I was more excited for than the main event, mostly because this was a trilogy fight. And it's a little bit different than most trilogy fights. Most trilogy fights, the guys come into the fight 1-1. But Alexander Volkanovski had actually taken the win in both of the first 2 fights against Max Holloway. But this one was really still compelling because Max Holloway, before his initial loss to Alexander Volkanovski, was already being hailed as the best featherweight in UFC history at only the age of about 28. Really exciting guy. One of the most talented guys in the UFC for sure. And the first fight was razor thin. A lot of people had Max, a lot of people had Alex. That one, the first fight, was a unanimous decision for Volkanovski. And it caused a lot of stir in the MMA community because of the scorecards. One judge in that fight had Alexander Volkanovski winning 5-0, which I don't think anybody could tell me and be able to reason with me on that one. I think that fight, at its biggest disparity, was 4-1 at most. I think it was a 3-2 fight. And I initially remember feeling like Max Holloway won that fight, although Alexander Volkanovski did finish strong. Now, when their second fight came around, that was flipped. Max Holloway came out with a lot of new strategies, but Alexander Volkanovski was still guiding the fight, still pointing Max Holloway. He's a guy that likes to reach out and touch you, throws a lot of leg kicks, not doing the most damage in the world, but he's giving the judges something to watch. Then Max Holloway closed that fight beautifully and ended up losing a unanimous decision. Saturday was nothing like the first 2 fights. Max Holloway, in his 2 previous fights against Calvin Kattar and Yair Rodriguez, 2 really talented up-and-coming guys in the UFC right now, Max Holloway was looking like a beast in those last 2 fights. Both fights that went to unanimous decision, but both of those fights were brawls that Max Holloway was able to dominate. And he was really looking like he was taking his striking to the next level. But, man, he ran into a train on Saturday in Alexander Volkanovski. And it's also really interesting to see the younger guy like Max Holloway not be able to evolve as fast as Alexander Volkanovski has been evolving. Volkanovski is 33, but he's not showing any signs of fatigue. He is constantly evolving as a striker, but he also has wrestling skills that he can lean back into. And Max Holloway didn't really have anything for him. All 3 judges had the fight 5-0. I think everybody watching on TV or in the arena probably had the same thing. I don't think Max Holloway's mom could argue that he won a round in that fight. And that one was really sad to see. Not sure what Max Holloway is going to do next, because he's made it really obvious that he's at the top of the featherweight division, just not at the very top. And I think Alexander Volkanovski is the only guy in that division that can beat him, but he's got a firm grip on the title. So both of those guys have been talking about moving up in weight class. We'll see how that goes. I'm afraid Max Holloway might just end up running into bigger problems. Then we have the main event, Israel Adesanya and Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier is another guy that's a seasoned veteran of the UFC and just MMA in general. A guy that used to fight all the way up at heavyweight, and he's been able to work his way down to light heavyweight, down to middleweight. And at middleweight, he's just been a beast. He's been running through guys. But going into this fight, I didn't think he had the skill level to really be able to hang with Israel Adesanya. And that's about how things went. Israel Adesanya was showing him a lot of respect. You saw him not really want to get in there too much on offense. While he was dictating the pace of the fight, he was never too aggressive with Cannonier. And the crowd rained some boos on him a couple of times throughout the fight. Just not really a very exciting fight. You had two guys that were wanting to stand up and strike, and both guys were just showing each other a lot of respect, and nobody wants to take chances, which I understand, you know. Israel Adesanya, maybe the best striker in the world, and Jared Cannonier, a very deadly guy. You don't want to rush in there hastily and just, you know, throw away all that money, throw away a championship, just getting a little bit too antsy. So both of those guys it looked like they just never got out of that feeling out process, and Israel Adesanya came through with that unanimous decision. Jared Cannonier, he really seems like a guy that's probably just destined to be one of those gatekeeper kind of guys, a guy that the young up-and-comers have to get through before they can try to move into that championship echelon. And, you know, nothing wrong with that. You know, he's making his money. Israel Adesanya, I don't think he's going to be able to get away with a lackluster fight against Alex Pereira. He seems like a guy that's going to be in there and ready to push the action. So excited for that fight whenever that does come. Hopefully we might be able to get it by the end of the year. And on to the next one, man. Like I said, UFC has more hits than misses, so I'm not really worried about the future cards. But unfortunately, this is one that didn't pan out the way that I expected it to. So let me know what you guys think in the comments if you got out there and got a chance to see UFC 276. If you're familiar with these fighters, let me know what you think. And if you don't know much about UFC, let me know what you think you may know. So I'll see you guys next time. Be on the lookout for my NASCAR Cup Series Road America vlog coming out hopefully later this week. And I got a couple other things I'm cooking up for you guys too. So make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, hit the alerts bell so you don't miss the next video. And you can keep getting this sports talk injected into your daily ritual. So catch you guys next time. Peace.